What if I told you that one woman convinced some of the smartest people in Silicon Valley, and even the US military, that she could revolutionize medicine with a single drop of blood? What if that promise was worth $40 billion? And it was all built on a lie? This is the story of Elizabeth Holmes, the woman once hailed as the next Steve Jobs, who turned the dream of medical innovation into one of the biggest frauds in modern history. By the end of this story, you'll see how fear, ambition, and blind trust created a perfect storm, and how thousands of lives were put at risk in the name of innovation. IDICAS 2003. A 19-year-old Stanford dropout named Elizabeth Holmes walks into her Professor A.S. office with a bold idea. I want to revolutionize healthcare. I want to make blood testing so simple, anyone can do it at home with just one drop of blood. America loves visionaries, especially college dropouts who promise to change the world. Holmes founded a company called Theranos. It promised a future where blood testing, once painful and expensive, would become quick, affordable, and accessible to everyone. She wasn't just selling technology, she was selling peace of mind. Her idea tapped into something deeply emotional, the fear of disease and the hope of early detection. Soon, professors called her a genius, investors lined up, and Elizabeth began building her image. She wore black turtlenecks like Steve Jobs. She lowered her voice to sound more commanding. She stared intensely, rarely blinking. Everything about her screamed, "I'm not just a CEO, I'm a prophet of the future." Honestly, if confidence could cure disease, Theranos might have worked. But confidence doesn't make science obey deadlines. Theranos promised it could run over 200 medical tests using a single drop of blood. The machine, called Edison, was supposed to analyze tiny samples and produce instant results. Except, it didn't work, not even close. Behind the glass walls, engineers were panicking. Blood samples were being diluted. Test results were inconsistent. And instead of solving the problem, Holmes ordered absolute secrecy. No one, not even her investors, could see the data. Employees were isolated, sworn to silence. If you questioned her, you were labeled not a team player. Yet she convinced giants like Walgreens and Safeway to partner with her. Stores began installing Theranos wellness centers, ready to offer miracle blood tests to everyday Americans. Imagine walking into your local Walgreens, giving a single drop of blood, and thinking you're retesting for cancer or diabetes, but the machine behind the counter is spitting out random numbers. That's not innovation. That's gambling with people's lives. Still, the illusion continued. Theranos raised hundreds of millions from powerful investors, the Walton family, Rupert Murdoch, Henry Kissinger. Holmes appeared on the cover of Forbes and Fortune as the youngest self-made female billionaire. Her company was valued at $9 billion, and she owned half of it. She was untouchable, until one man decided to ask a simple question. John Carreyrou, a journalist from the Wall Street Journal, started getting tips from former employees who said, "Nothing works. The tests are unreliable. The results could harm patients." Carreyrou began digging deeper, but Holmes fought back hard. She threatened lawsuits. She hired the most feared lawyers in the country. She called journalists liars, but truth has a way of leaking, like blood from a pinprick. When Carreyrou published his expose in 2015, the illusion shattered. The US government launched investigations. The FDA, CMS, and SEC all came knocking. Suddenly, the billion-dollar disruptor was being called the biggest fraud since Enron. Holmes went from being compared to Steve Jobs to being compared to Bernie Madoff. Talk about a career pivot no one wants on their LinkedIn. The dream was over. Theranos collapsed. Investors lost billions. But the real victims were patients who received false test results. Imagine being told you're HIV positive when you're not, or being told you're perfectly healthy when you actually have cancer. That happened because one woman refused to admit failure. In 2018, Holmes and her partner Sunny Balwani were charged with multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. Their trial became a spectacle, not just about science or money, but about how far people will go to protect a dream. Holmes claimed she never meant to deceive anyone. She said she believed in the technology. She blamed her subordinates, the media, even her partner. But jurors weren't buying it. In 2022, she was found guilty on 4 counts of fraud and sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison. Theranos, once valued at $9 billion, was now worth zero. The $40 billion dream had become a $40 billion lie. So how did she fool everyone? Was it because she was smart, charismatic, manipulative? Yes, but it goes deeper. Holmes understood one powerful truth. People don't invest in technology. They invest in belief. She built her empire on the fear of sickness and the hope of salvation. She played to America's obsession with disruption, where moving fast and breaking things is seen as heroic, even in healthcare, where breaking things means breaking lives. We wanted her to be real. We wanted a female Steve Jobs. And in that collective wish, we ignored the evidence. Let's be honest. If a teenager in a black turtleneck promised to cure cancer on TikTok today, half of us might hit follow. The Theranos story isn't just about one woman's deception. It is about our vulnerability to the illusion of innovation. We live in a world where startups promise to change everything, from how we eat, to how we sleep, to how we die. But here's the truth. Innovation without accountability is just chaos with branding. The next Theranos might not be in medicine. It could be in artificial intelligence, crypto, or climate tech. And it might already be happening, quietly, behind closed doors, backed by billions. That's why stories like this matter, not because they're scandals, but because they're warnings. We can admire visionaries. We can celebrate bold ideas. But we must demand evidence before belief, data before devotion, and truth before trillion-dollar valuations. Today, Elizabeth Holmes sits in a federal prison, a symbol of how the pursuit of greatness can turn into the worship of lies. But here's the real question. Was she a sociopath or a symptom? Maybe the real problem wasn't her ambition, but the system that rewards illusion more than integrity. Holmes once said, "You can change the world if you believe in it enough." And she did change the world, just not in the way she intended. Her story is a mirror reflecting our hunger for miracles, our blind faith in charisma, and our fear of missing out on the next big thing. So the next time you hear someone say they're revolutionizing the future, remember, even the biggest dreams can bleed. This is Truvo, where every story bleeds the truth. If you found this story eye-opening, subscribe to Truvo, like this video, and share it with someone who believes every startup is the next big thing. Because the next billion-dollar lie might already be unfolding, right now.